Chapter 9. As George stepped from the hillside onto the Peopletown outskirts, the prospect of getting his hummus was making him very peckish indeed. He descended a glassy slope and soon picked up a road that led into a well-to-do residential district. All seems quiet, he thought, cringing slightly as the sound of cracking tarmac came from beneath him for the third time in under a minute. No one screaming yet or making a scene. Could today be a turning point? George kept on going, admiring the neatly sculpted hedges and painstakingly maintained front gardens of the large houses that had begun to appear. As was always the case, and in this part of Peopletown in particular, the more George saw, the more he felt at home. Entrances flanked by marble pillars and adorned with blooming hanging baskets. Driveways longer than his entire vegetable garden. Pristine white fences, just like his had once been, but double the height so you couldn't see anything beyond it. Adorable. This was the life he wanted. To be surrounded by nice, aspirational sorts who didn't need to concern themselves with price tags, household chores, or their own offspring. Perhaps today I'll manage to have a pleasant conversation with someone, George told himself. Show them I'm just like them. A good sort, a decent chap, a vroom, screech. George spun around just in time to see a white van reversing at speed. Zigzagging from one curb to the other, the battered vehicle side-swiped a parked car, bumped up the pavement, and then disappeared around a corner in a cloud of pollution. For a second George stood gathering his thoughts. Had the tradesman, a rough of hand, pure of heart, cheeky chappie no doubt, merely gotten a whiff of the taxman? It was, of course, a possibility. However, despite his optimism, the obvious could not be ignored. Looking down at the deep pothole now beneath his heel, George groaned. He was no idiot. Nothing had changed. It was going to be another one of those days. Bang! Slam! Clunk! As George plodded along, doors and windows banged on all sides. Spiked iron gates electronically folded closed. Terrified cleaners and gardeners fled for their lives over back fences. Double garages swung shut. With an exasperated sigh and an emerging tear, he pressed on, now most despondent. Okay, so maybe he did look stereotypically terrifying to those who allowed prejudice and basic survival instincts to determine their decisions. But underneath he was a nice guy. If only people would give him a chance. Was that really too much to ask? He took a deep breath. He was doing his best here, his best in difficult circumstances. It wasn't easy to put yourself out there, to try to meet new people. But if everyone insisted on focusing on the perceived likelihood of being killed, of dwelling on the imagined probability of some sort of bloodthirsty rampage, then in all fairness, what the ruddy hell was he supposed to do about it? He prickled. Actually thinking about it, their conduct was rather irksome. Rude, even, not to mention discriminatory, and it was perfectly normal that he should now be grinding his teeth and having highly detailed, vexatious thoughts about exactly what he would like to do when he did finally collar one of the disrespectful, intolerant cowards. Seriously, this whole gaining acceptance guff was a complete and utter massive pain in the arse. Bzzz, bzzz, bip, bop, bip. From within George's dragon bag, a vibration followed by a beeping caught his attention. That was odd. Cautiously he opened the fastener and was immediately greeted by a strange white glow. It was the phone. The one he had forgotten he even had. The one he had inadvertently acquired 2 weeks ago on his last visit to Peopletown, due to it being carelessly left in the bottom of the abandoned jute shopping bag that he had borrowed to carry home his Whole Foods shop purchases. And it had just come to life. Despite their popularity in Dragonville, with a certain demographic at least, George didn't own a mobile phone. Isolating oneself from society seemed a bit of a waste of time if others could simply call up and insult you in the comfort of your own home. And even if the potential for abuse was ignored, George had always found the bleeping devices to be rather crass. Not the sort of thing an intelligent, cultured individual would concern oneself with. But this phone was completely different. This was a people phone, no doubt a sophisticated and useful tool intended for high-level communication and the facilitation of important social interactions. And because of this, George had spent over an hour at his kitchen table trying to get it to work. Unfortunately, his efforts had been to no avail. After being constantly informed that there was no network available, George, bitterly disappointed, had given up and had been intending to quietly return it to Farmer Fred's when he next visited so he wouldn't be accused of stealing. However, now the phone was doing something. Now on the screen there was a picture of an envelope and the words, "New message." Most intriguing. As gently as he could, George used the tip of his smallest claw to tap the read icon, leaving only a medium-sized gouge on the display as he did so. Instantly a block of text appeared. "Welcome to Peopletown Supermarket Brand Mobile. For conditions, visit—" "Aha!" gasped George. "We're in business." This was a perfect opportunity, and straight away George knew exactly what he was going to do. He would do what any civilized, right-minded non-cretin did before making any sort of visit. He would call ahead and alert his intended host to expect him. This could solve all of his problems. The unforeseen appearance of a giant green dragon might well be completely petrifying to those who felt the need to allow their gut reactions to reinforce outdated regressive views. However, the scheduled arrival, allowing adequate time for preparation and planning, of a civilized, erudite vegan might be far more palatable. It could make all the difference between a hostile response and a glowing welcome. Quite simply, it was the decent thing to do. George began to rummage in his dragon bag and soon pulled out a promotional flyer he'd collected previously from Farmer Fred's, which listed in bullet points the virtues of lentils: high fibre, delicious, versatile, high fibre, environmentally friendly, tiny and therefore tiny carbon footprint, high fibre, and included a coupon offering a 1.5% discount on all orders in excess of 20 kilograms. And there at the top, beneath the huge, printed on recycled paper which was sourced by hand from a 100% sustainable forest sustained by indigenous impoverished ethnic tree growers, was the shop's phone number. His claws trembling slightly, George began to dial, shuddering as additional gouges split the screen. He actually felt really nervous. After all the years he had been visiting their town, he was about to have his first real conversation with people. Not just their screams as they tore off into the distance. And not just with any people either, with the people from his absolute favourite shop, the legendary Farmer Fred himself possibly, if he ever answered the phone. The dialing tone continued and George took a deep breath. What was he going to say? For a second he thought about hanging up and preparing a short speech. Something succinct yet memorable, something which would make him come across in a positive click. "Hello, Farmer Fred—" Whoa! Julian almost toppled off the swivel chair that he had now balanced on the filing cabinet which was still shoved up against the door inside the office. "Sorry, fair trade, organic, etc. whole food store." Grabbing the top of the door frame, he steadied himself. "The owner speaking. What can I—" "Yes, hello," came George's voice. "Mr. Fred, so good to speak to you at last." "Mr. Winterburn?" Julian frowned towards his phone's display. "Mr. Winterburn, is that you?" Suddenly he focused on the wall. He covered the microphone. "I can hear you out there," he sing-songed. "And no, you won't wrestle me out. I know I have the physique of a stereotypical vegan, but let me assure you I'm lithe, I'm lean, I'm 4% body fat. Plus, I'm well aware it's more than your job's worth to lay a single carnivorous finger on me, you capitalistic corporate sellouts. I've got 7 years' worth of dried food in here and a tap and a kettle. I'm going nowhere." He uncovered the phone. "Sorry, Mr. Winterburn." "What?" replied George. No, Like I just explained in great detail, I'm not Mr. Winterburn. My name is George, and—" "Are you sure?" pressed Julian. "The number you're calling from is Mr. Winterburn's. It's programmed into the phone here." No," stuttered George. "Definitely not Mr. Winterburn. I found this phone in a bus shelter." Julian let out a deep groan. "Look, Mr. Winterburn," he said flatly, "I know it's you, and I know you've faked your own death to avoid paying your monthly tab, or possibly to run off abroad with all the jewellery from your shop in the robbery everyone thinks you staged, or maybe even to escape from your leathery, lovely wife. All three sound equally plausible." "Sorry, 1 second." He covered the phone. "Don't you dare damage that door. It's hardwood. The rainforest made a considerable sacrifice to provide me with a quality, secure interior." Julian removed his hand from the mouthpiece. "Okay, I'm back. All go in here today. Right, Mr. Winterburn." "No," protested George. "For the 7th, 8th time now, perhaps, it is not Mr. Winterburn." "Shh!" Julian lifted the phone from his ear. "I'm sorry," came George's voice, only just audible. Did you just shush me?" "I can see you outside the window," yelled Julian. "Sorry, not you, Mr. Wint. You know I won't go down without a fight. That's the thing with us vegans. We're all peace-loving and in harmony with nature and what else, Spiritual and zen and equal opportunities and the rest of it, until you challenge our beliefs. And then we're about as reasonable as those mink we released, escaped from those farms 20 years ago. Yeah, okay, fine, but their hearts were in the right places. They were young, okay?" Julian looked back to the phone and realized he hadn't covered the right end. He shrugged. "Mr. W, just come in and we'll sort it out," he continued. "Fancy thinking we'd all believe you'd been dragged out of the shop and eaten by that fat, goofy dragon. How long have you been in hiding for now? About a fortnight? It's a bit extreme for 3 100-gram bags of premium organic fair trade pepper-coated cashews. It's only £39 and 75 pence you owe. Come on, I won't tell the police or your missus I've seen you. Our security camera footage can stay lost. Vegan shopkeeper's honour." From down the line there was now a lot of crackling and incomprehensible muttering. Julian looked towards the bits of wood from the boxes of mangoes that he had sticky-taped over the window, then shook his head. "Mr. Winterburn," he finally announced, "I need to go. I've got a lot to do. I've got to, draw a convincing picture of an aubergine on the sandwich board for the 10 for 9 promo. Always a challenge. Get it wrong and we get no end of complaints. And this," he put his hand over the phone to have a quick listen to the goings-on outside, "community notice board isn't going to tidy itself, is it? Just come in today before 5 with the cash." Again he covered the phone. "Lots and lots of cash, because I do have lots and lots of cash coming to me really, really soon, which I will use to pay off all my debts, rendering any repossessions redundant." He uncovered the phone. "And then I won't have to send the filth around, okay?" "Sorry, stop!" George's voice returned, sounding strained. "Now listen, because I absolutely refuse to repeat this yet again. I am not Mr. Winterburn, nor do I know anything about him. My name is George, and, well, there's no easy ways to put this. I am a dragon, and I'm calling to let you know that I'm currently on my way to visit your establishment." "Dragon?" Julian plummeted from the filing cabinet, landing in the basket of macadamia nuts that he had now eaten 4 packets of. "The dragon?" Quickly he pushed his mouth toward the keyhole. "The same dragon that killed and then ate someone here 2 weeks ago? And you're on your way now to eat someone else, arriving in about 5 minutes? Oh no! Help! Help! We'd better all get out of here really, really quickly, and not waste any time carrying away anyone else's possessions which may or may not be covered by a security interest. Ah! 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 Ah!" Julian paused, and as if on cue, a van engine spluttered into life, followed by a squeal of tyres. He looked towards his lentil shrine and raised a thumb. "Thank you, O mighty fibrous one." Click. He hung up. Feeling very disheartened, George put the phone back into his bag. That hadn't gone quite as he had intended. Should have prepared the call in advance. Obviously, on the plus side, at least the people were expecting him this time. There wouldn't be the embarrassing awkwardness of an unannounced arrival to contend with. Unfortunately, however, if the rumours of the recently demised Mr. Winterburn were anything to go by, what the people were actually expecting was probably for him to turn up and rip somebody limb from limb before making off with some of their personal property. Once again, a glowing reception did not seem to be on the cards. Incredibly, however, that wasn't even the worst of what lay in store for George this afternoon.